we're going to start with a case that it's not a new case, but I think it's appropriate. The GlaxoSmithKline, which is a pharmaceutical company, back in 2012, they were charged with by federal authorities, both civil and criminal court, for unlawfully promoting prescription drugs, which essentially means that they were promoting drugs usage that the FDA had not approved yet, and they paid $1 billion in penalties for criminal, and then $2 billion for civil charges. And so that was interesting because two whistleblowers had come forward back in the early 2000s, and by the time they were GlaxoSmithKline was charged, they had helped with the federal authorities to put together the case. Greg, hopefully companies don't, have a whistleblower of this magnitude, but it, certainly this is the type of case that would give compliance officers nightmares. I mean, what do you think companies could have done to avoid this type of, nightmare from a whistleblower standpoint?
No, Mark, great example. And, it is historical in the sense of we're going back 20 years now, but something of this size and scope, it does have some lessons that we can glean from it. And I think one thing to point out is that the whistleblowers actually came forward with their initial complaints about the questionable pharmaceutical marketing practices back in 2001. And they did that through their own managers within the company itself. And when those complaints went unheeded, then, as you pointed out, in 2003, those whistleblowers then went to federal authorities. So obviously, there's some missed opportunities there internally to react to and investigate the initial allegations. Point number one. Point number two, as you said, the federal government is anything but thorough and extremely time consuming. This thing went on for like a decade. And, so that whole process of going through that ultimately could potentially have been avoided or at least protracted. So again, being a little bit more responsive to those initial complaints and encouraging employees to come forward and knowing that they're actually going to get a response out of that would have been helpful in this case, because the end result, as you pointed out, is a $3 billion fine for criminal and civil violations.
Yeah, and not to mention the probably millions and millions of dollars they paid to defend themselves against the federal authorities. So, a lot of clients that we talk to are like, well, we don't really, man our whistleblower hotline, or we don't have one. I mean, and saying maybe, fraud has declined. Well, why don't we, show our receipts, so to speak, and talk about some of the trends in the whistleblower hotline area. So, Greg, why don't you kind of walk us through some of the trends in the whistleblower reports?
Yeah, sure, Mark. We do live in this post-pandemic era that the world has changed so much in the last 3 or 4 years, and I would throw this into the category too, where whistleblower trends, as you can see from the graph, are actually reaching the highest levels we've seen in really in decades. Now, this could be, I guess, due to a couple of factors. Number one, Department of Justice and SEC are encouraging whistleblowers more and more now to come forward and incentivizing them. But it's irrefutable here at this NAVEX chart. You can see that hotline calls, the trend is rising. The median, the range of it is at the highest we've seen. So, if you go to the next slide, you'll actually see, though, however, that there are missed opportunities to uncover fraud. So there's only between 10 to 15% inquiries are resulting from those allegations. So those opportunities are at an all-time high, but the missed opportunities are at an all-time low.